Hi, Maddie.
Hi,
How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
So I just want to interview you, kind of get to know your musical background and how you got started. So can you tell me like what's your musical background and what kind of instruments you play?
So, let's see. My music career started when I was 8, and I started taking classical guitar lessons. My parents had this rule where all my siblings and I had to learn an instrument, and we had to know how to read music. We didn't have to do it. We only had to do it for like a year or so. And we could continue if we wanted to, but we didn't have to. So my older brother played guitar,
Hmm.
and I'm the youngest of four, and I was like, I want to be like my older brother. So I was like, I want to play guitar lessons. So my parents signed me up, and I started doing those. And the teacher that I went to, it wasn't through school or anything. He was just, sounds really weird saying he was just a random guy in the community, but he's a really well-known guitarist. He taught at a college in my area, but he did private lessons. So I would go there, and his rule was no matter what kind of guitar you wanted to play, you had to learn classical first, because it's a great foundation. You learn all the technique, and then you can play whatever you want. So I started with classical, and I don't know, for some reason I always really liked classical. Sometimes we would play other stuff like Taylor Swift or whatever.
Yeah.
But I always wanted to stick with classical. And it's funny looking back now because I hated practicing when I was younger, like most kids do.
Right.
And I would take a little breaks here and there at a time. Because obviously, you're school and I was swimming, so I had a lot going on. But my parents were always like, you know what, we can take a little break, but like let's continue with it. And I'm so happy that there were so many times I was like, I should just be done with this. But they didn't like pressure me to continue, but they were very much like, we're gonna keep doing this. And I'm so glad they did. I'm so glad because
Yeah.
ever since I got to college, that's honestly when I got really serious about it. And I came to college, and I didn't realize I could take guitar lessons here. I took a jazz class with Dr. Eastlick. Have you ever had him?
I know.
Yeah. For like my gen ed. And something came about playing guitar, and he's like, oh, you can play guitar lessons here. And I was like, I did not know that. So I started lessons here, and I've done it every semester since. And I actually got way more into it than I ever did. So that was my guitar background. And through that, I kind of got really interested in the music department more here. I was in chorus forever in elementary school and high school.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of vocal stuff. I did all county, which was like a couple kids from each school in the county got together to do a chorus, and this thing called NISMA, which was just a New York thing. I don't even remember what it stands for, but it's basically like a competition for any instrument. And I did it for vocals for many years. But it was always something that you kind of were talking about earlier, like kind of like the hobby side of it. And for me, it was always just something extra that I did. And there was always a little part of me that wanted to go much farther with it, but never did, because it was always like, no, I'm an athlete, or I'm a nerd, basically. Like, and so I kind of felt like my identity was very segmented.
Right.
And that was one area that I didn't have as much confidence with in myself.
Yeah.
So I didn't ever pursue it more. And then I came to college, and I was like, oh, maybe I could take some music classes. And so I did, and that just kind of like took off.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing classical guitar. I also have a steel string, so I play random acoustic stuff for fun. My brother has an electric that I mess around on sometimes. I've also kind of self-taught piano, not anything very good, but I can play some chords and mess around on that. I also have ukulele, which I got over COVID because I was like, I want to play ukulele. It was like $30, so I got it. And I've always had this desire to like learn every single instrument ever. Like I want to know all of them.
Yeah.
So I played bass for the first time the other week, actually, and that was pretty fun.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the extent of I tried violin, and it was really hard. But I also have a frame drum too, which is like a tambourine without the bells. I recently got that. I'm no good at rhythm. I'm terrible. but maybe this will help me with that. So that's kind of my general, that was a long-winded answer, but my general music background.
Yeah. So you said you weren't too confident in kind of your musical abilities, at least when you started.
Yeah.
So how did that transition into like writing your own songs?
So to be perfectly honest, I'm still not at all confident in my music abilities, which is just kind of a personal problem that probably sets me back more than anything. And really the reason I decided to do a composition project and get into songwriting, I don't know, I think other people encouraged me enough to do it.
Like who?
My mom, my parents, professors, my friends. Because I love writing poetry. I've always loved writing poetry. And over COVID, I wrote a couple songs because I just sat at the piano and I was just, we have like a little, it's like a keyboard. We have a keyboard at home. And I was just like messing around and I don't know, something weirdly just like overcame me. And I just, boom, I wrote like 4 songs in like a week. Not awesome, but they were,
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, this was really fun. I loved doing this. Like, this is crazy. And I think it's because my dad loves Taylor Swift, naturally. And do you know her song All Too Well?
I think I've heard it. Yeah.
She has like a 10-minute version now, and it's like, I love that song. It's really good, but she does a great job of like storytelling. My dad loves that song, and he would like play it all the time, and he would watch like live performances of her doing it, and he would always look at me and he'd be like, that could be like, that's so you, like you could totally do that. Like you can do that. And I'm like, oh, why do you say that? So I think he was going through a phase of like really getting into that again. And so I started doing that. And then I took a class here. It's like the music performance lab thing. Oh, you were in that class too. And now it's funny retelling you this story because you were there. But Adelaide Tracy was in that class, and for that final project, we had to just like make something.
Yeah.
It was very open-ended, and Adelaide and I we just kind of looked at each other and we're like, let's write a song. Like let's just write a song. And I had a few ideas in my head that week, and I showed them to her, and she was like, this is great, like let's do this. And we went upstairs after class and wrote that song in like an hour. And it was so fun, and I really enjoyed that process. So after that, I don't know, I just was kind of thinking, okay, what do I want to do for my capstone project? And I was thinking I'd probably do a research project. Boring. No, I'm just kidding. Probably something to do with marketing because that's my other major. But I've done so many research projects that I was like, I want to do something different. And I was kind of getting this taste now of like, it was like that first hit of like songwriting, when you like write one good song and you're like, oh man, like, and then you just like don't want to stop, right? So I think that was that. And my guitar teacher here was like, you should do a composition project. And I talked to Dr. Love after a class one day, and because I've had her for a lot of classes, and I kind of was like, hey, is that something that people can do? Like I didn't really know anything. She was like, yes, you should do that. And I was like, okay. So I kind of forced myself out of my comfort zone to do something that I was really nervous about. And when I started with it, it was scary, and it still kind of is, especially first semester, because I was working with other people that had written songs before that were much more confident in themselves than I was. And that's really intimidating to walk into a room and be with like, nothing against guys, but walk into a room with like 4 other guys who do this all the time. They play together all the time. Like they're very comfortable sharing their material with each other, and me sitting there like shaking like a leaf every time we have class. And honestly, like Dr. Broning, like working with him helped me so much because he was very supportive, and he's very much like, oh, don't worry about them. Like you're great. Like, so I enjoyed the writing process through there. And the confidence is getting better, but I still get really nervous sharing my stuff with other people. I like the live performance part of it. I like that crowd interaction. I think as I do that more, it helps me feel more confident. And the recording process is so much different than that, that it's still a learning curve. I'm definitely not as confident, and I still sometimes feel like, I don't know if like imposter syndrome is the right word to use here, but sometimes I still feel like I did in high school, where I'm like, I'm an outsider, like I don't really belong in this space, like I'm almost like intruding, which isn't true, so I don't know why I feel like that, but that's.
Well, I think that's not an uncommon feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Feel like even when we shared 3 weeks ago, like I was pretty nervous, pretty anxious. And I told Dr. Browning that, and he was like pretty surprised.
Yeah.
He said like I hit it pretty well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean everyone gets nervous, like especially if the song or the composition you wrote is like something personal to you and you spend hours on it, and for someone else to like judge it in like a way that you didn't want them to judge, it's like it would cause like anxiety for most people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think you're alone.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
Yeah. Okay, but okay, so after graduation, after your capstone project, what are like the next steps in terms of your music?
Life.
Well, do you think you'll continue to write more songs?
That's a good question. I don't think I'll ever stop. I have 10,000 billion notes on my phone of just like little fragment ideas.
Yeah.
And I think even when I was younger, I just liked writing poems, and I genuinely enjoy writing. So I think I won't ever lose that. And now that I have a lot more musical knowledge, I can kind of pair those together.
So you do write lyrics first before the melody, or?
Most of the time I do have lyrics first.
Okay.
There have been occasions where I come up with a tune and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Or like I have a riff. There was one of the songs I wrote for this project, I used a riff that I've had in my head for like 4 years that I've just like never done anything with. But I typically do write lyrics first. Or if I have like a general theme in my head or something, I kind of pluck out a certain tune or some chord structure that I think fits that vibe, and then I kind of structure the words around it. Most of the time I write lyrics first though.
Okay.
But in terms of music after graduation, I don't know, I think it's become such a big part of my life. I mean, just listening to music, I legitimately like can't go like 30 seconds without like listening to something. But I don't know. I don't think I'll ever stop writing. I don't really know if I'll like make a career out of it, or even if I can. Obviously, it's like a really difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
I'm sure tons of people do it, but honestly, what you were saying earlier about majoring in something practical and majoring in something you want to do, I have literally the exact same thing. I have the business degree, or I'm getting the business degree because I want a job and I want to be able to support myself and whatever that, and I can always have music on the side. It's not like I won't be able to play guitar anymore or write. But I don't know. I'm not entirely staying closed off to the if an opportunity presents itself to get into the industry in some sort of capacity. But again, I think that's where that confidence issue is like holding me back from exploring different options or trying to get my stuff out there, or saying like, no, it's definitely not good enough. People don't want to listen to that. Like, I'll just do it for myself. But I don't know, maybe that's something I can work on internally.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, thank you for that.
You're welcome.